Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Scott Luton and Kim Mortar with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. Kim, how we doing today?
Doing great. Just coming off a lovely weekend, so it's a good Monday.
Outstanding. It looks gorgeous up there in Virginia,
Thank you.
right? The sun's coming in.
Yep,
Summer's here.
it is.
It is, and it's making its presence felt. At least down here in Georgia, where the temperatures were approaching the mid and upper 90s.
Yeah, you guys are getting a lot of heat down there.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Well, hey, speaking of heat and hotness, it's going to be almost as hot as the show we got teed up here today. Kim, are you ready?
I am so excited.
We got some great topics we're going to be talking about. Folks, y'all know it's The Buzz. Every Monday at 12 noon Eastern time, we discuss a variety of news and developments across global supply chain, global business. We're tapping into Kim's expertise, especially when it comes to retail and e-commerce. We're talking about May inflation numbers. They just came in. There might be a little bit of good news there. The last mile battle, ageless battle in retail keeps on raging. We're going to dive into AI with a special guest, John DeSarbo from ZS Associates, about 12:25 p.m. Eastern time. So, Kim, folks better buckle up and get ready. It should be a great show, huh?
Yes, absolutely. Good stuff.
Good stuff. So, folks, two things before we get going here today. First, give us your take in the comments, right? Whether you're tuned in via LinkedIn, YouTube, X, Facebook, Twitch, no matter, let us know what you think. And secondly, if you enjoy the show today, we'd love for you to share it with a friend and your network. They'll be glad you did. Okay, so Kim, let's start with one of our favorite resources around here, and that is the With That Said almost weekly newsletter. We give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room there, Kim. Almost weekly newsletter. Folks, this went out over the weekend. We dove into the Port of Baltimore, opened back up last week, and they're expecting to be back in full volume as they were like pre-incident in 2025. They've had no major contracts back away. That's great. The cocoa market. Well, let's pause there for a second, Kim. That's not too far from your neck of the woods. Any comments on what's going on with the port?
It's great news that they haven't had any contracts pull out. I know that they were really worried about that for the Port of Baltimore. They've done a lot of investment in keeping the channels open all up and down the Chesapeake Bay to keep Baltimore a good, viable port for the country. It's a great port for inland because of its location. So I am so glad to see that Baltimore is coming back, and the shipping channel has been open for about 3 or 4 weeks. So back in business.
That's right. Back in business. In fact, the roll-on, roll-off vehicle volume has already been picking up, which is great to see, right? Speaking of really quick, before I share a couple of things, we've got a couple of our favorites in the comments here today, starting with Charles Walker. Hello, Scott and Kim. Happy Monday to you both. Happy Monday to you, Charles. Love all that you do out across industry. And T Squared, who holds the fort down for us on YouTube, says, bring on the supply chain management nourishment along with ice cold lemonade. We need that in this heat. T Squared and Charles, y'all keep it coming. All right, a couple of quick things as it relates to With That Said. We're going to drop a link so y'all can check it out. You can be one of the 25,000 cool kids that subscribe to this newsletter. We're going to make that easy for you and drop it. The cocoa market is raging. Kim, the price per metric ton has more than tripled over the last year. I think it's over $11,000, which is an all-time high. And for the most part, a lot of big candy makers, since they got longer contracts, they're not feeling the pain yet. But goodness gracious, the 2025 renewal conversations, Kim, might be a bit painful, you think?
I think it's going to be painful. I think we've been expecting this to happen. I'm shocked that we haven't seen a huge price increase in the chocolate market to begin with. The cocoa market, it's not chocolate yet. But yeah, I think in 2025, we're going to start seeing it. Hopefully by the time this hits, so maybe our inflation will be down a little bit and the pain won't be so bad.
Right.
But I hope we're not in a gas price situation with chocolate here in the near future.
Oh, man, that's going to make life so much more painful, Kim. We rely on chocolate amongst other things.
I would give it gas before chocolate, to be totally honest with you.
Right. And so check it out. We got links to these stories and some perspective there. And then finally, a really cool survey by Microsoft and LinkedIn. I think it was about 31,000 people from over 30 countries around the globe. And one of their key findings was 78% of Gen AI users are bringing their own tools to work to use Kim. Now, on one hand, I applaud that. But on the other hand, if you're managing your cybersecurity, that kind of makes things a little more complicated. What do you think, Kim?
It's extremely complicated. Not just we have security issues, right? We have every AI is built on a different platform with different tools, with different metadata. You're going to get different answers from each one. I think AI is a bigger conversation, which we will probably have a little bit later on, but it's a little bit scary. I'm going to be honest with you. Like what I see happening with AI, I'm concerned on multiple levels. So we'll see what happens. It is the shiny new object, though. So we'll see if it has staying power.
Good stuff. And we are going to dive into that deeper when John joins us. And, wish we had about 6 hours because, to your point, it is a big discussion. There's so many elements. So stay tuned, folks. We're going to tackle that the second half of the show. Also, stay tuned. We've got speaking of Microsoft, we've got an outstanding podcast coming up focused on cybersecurity best practices. And I think that drops in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned there. Okay. With that said, we dropped a link there in the chat. So you are just one click away. Also, while we're offering resources, you may not have checked out the Supply Chain Now YouTube page. A lot more and more folks, we're seeing a lot more traffic. Folks go there because it's easier to stay up to date and listen no matter what device you're on. So check it out. We'll drop the link in the chat as well. Kim, do you watch much YouTube?
A little bit for educational purposes, mostly, to be totally honest with you. I don't use it a lot for entertainment. I use it for when I need to figure out how to do something or looking for tips on how to do business better. That's what I use YouTube for.
Hey, you're in a big bucket of folks that use YouTube just for that. And I tell you, you can find just about anything. One of my favorite things beyond what you shared there, I like finding going down memory lane, especially in the 80s and 90s. And there's I've had so many like eureka moments of things I've completely forgotten about. And you can find it, of course, on YouTube.
Like, do you have an example of one that you bumped into?
Commercials. I was one of those. I watched a lot of TV as a kid, all 3 channels we got with the bunny ears and all. And you remember back on Saturdays when it was truly, 7 a.m. to 1 p.m., it was Cartoon City. All right.
Yes.
Well, all those commercials, right, that I've completely forgotten about. So that's one of my dirty pleasures, checking out old commercials.
The Kool-Aid commercials and stuff like that when we were kids. Yep.
Oh, love it. Okay, so we got a couple stories we're going to dive into here today. I can't wait to get your take on both of these, Kim. And then John DeSarbo with ZS are joining us, and we're going to take a deep dive into a lot of things related to AI. So stay tuned. And yes, T Squared, Supply Chain, YouTube is an 80s cartoon lover's dream. You can find anything, any kind of cartoon you used to watch back in the day, you can find on YouTube. But I digress. All right, so Kim, let's talk from YouTube, from cartoons and commercials to inflation. Okay. So check out this article, folks, from our friends at Retail Brew. They do a great job over at Retail Brew, the whole family of content there. So the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics released numbers for May in the last week or so as it relates to the economy and especially inflation. The good news, inflation wasn't quite as bad as it was in April, but it only dropped, the rate of growth only dropped 0.1%. That's right. So inflation in April, year over year, April 2024 over 2023 was 3.4%. In May, that dropped year over year to 3.3%. And of course, still way above, Kim, the Fed's target of 2%. So looking at a few specific categories, food away from home, like restaurants, that was up 0.4% in May. Apparel prices up almost 1% year over year. Alcoholic beverages that you use at home, not in the bars, but use at home, up 1.4% year over year. Now the National Retail Federation, NRF, says that retail sales were up in May 3% year over year. Now that's kind of interesting because it's almost right in line with inflation. Funny how kind of how that happens, Kim. But your thoughts as it relates to inflation, retail sales, the whole shebang, Kim?
How it relates to retail sales, so that's a big question. One, I'm glad to see that inflation's flattening out a little bit, and hopefully this continues. I'm not willing to put money on the fact that inflation's not going to sneak back up over summer, just because those are big spending times for people. As far as apparel being up 1%, I think a lot of that is due. We're starting to see increases in our shipping cost. Our supply chain costs are going up, bringing stuff back into the US. That is certainly going to impact our apparel prices since much of our stuff comes from overseas. And then retail and restaurants, and people are not eating out as much, I don't think.
Yeah.
The cost of continuing to do these activities, we're seeing people pull back on vacations or pulling back on rentals. People are tightening the belts a little bit, like they're starting to feel it. And this summer is probably our first big summer where everybody is out and about. We're not dealing with COVID anymore. So I'm not shocked to see that some of that apparel is going up. I would love to see actual food and grocery stores continue to drop.
Right.
We're almost at a point where, it's easier just to eat out than to go to the grocery store. It's almost cheaper for me to actually go into a restaurant. So those are my takes on it. Yeah, it's a big question.
It is a big question, and we'll touch on some of this in the next article. But as a consumer, right? Taking my practitioner hat off for a second, as a consumer, one of our go-tos, especially as a family, we got a family of 5. One of our go-tos for a long time, if we didn't feel like cooking, but we don't want to spend much money, was pizza.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be able to feed the whole family $20, especially if we went on the cheaper route with the Little Caesars takeouts. These days, we don't get away with less than $45, be able to feed the whole family. And it's just one of those regular opportunities to kind of put your finger on the pulse to kind of, I think to see where the overall economy and this inflation battle is. So, Kim, where do you see, I know you were talking about, you wish grocery stores would reflect some of the good news we're seeing here faster, but you know how it works, right? You raise prices up quick and you drop them real
slowly. Yeah. I mean, I can't get out of the grocery store. I don't have really a family out of the grocery store for under $100 a week, which is shocking to me. Like, I'm just like, I don't even eat that much. But I think we're just right now, like we've talked about before with inflations, with the duties and taxes, the Section 301 duties that we still have in place on our imports that are coming from China. Imports from China have not slowed. I have a shocker for everybody. We're getting into peak season. We're starting to hit capacity issues again. It's not good.
The pain ain't going away anytime
soon.
No,
it is not. So, yeah.
But there is some good news, and we're going to get into it here more. I promise, more good news. Y'all know me. I love talking good news and being optimistic, but we got to be realistic as we're being optimistic, right, Kim?
Mm-hmm.
All right, a couple quick comments before we move to this next story here. Hey, Bakil, great to have you here from Yemen. Happy to participate. He's got a question for you, which, Kim, this is a great question we're going to touch on later.
Yeah.
But Bakil, I'm going to go ahead and, hey, what are your thoughts on how these technologies can be leveraged to improve efficiency and visibility within the supply chain? Hold that question, Bakil, because we're going to dive into it in the second half of the show. Let's see here. Charles, going back to YouTube, great tool for business operations, emotional intelligence, supply chain operations, and overall learning for those that need more awareness across all those things. Excellent point, Charles, and more. So, and finally, T squared, let's not leave greedflation out of the conversation. It's still very present.
This is true. Yeah, this is true. Credit card debt is still at all-time high. Yeah, we are still seeing this sort of fill my needs thing going on post-pandemic. Right. Yeah, I agree.
So we'll see. We're going to keep our finger on the pulse of that as well. T-squared, great call out. And finally, and this is a big comment, it might cover us up here, so I'm just going to read it off. Charles, great to have you, by the way, Charles. Let's see. In 2023, Charles says the average inflation rate was 4.1%. And in 2022, it reached 8% due to pandemic-related disruptions. That shouldn't shock us. We've all lived that. I've just kind of forgotten about those numbers. So
right. I think we forgot that we were paying $20 a roll for toilet paper. Like we forgot about that. Convenient. We forgot about it.
So true. So true. But he points out, for me, I always compare different data to get closer to the truth. Charles, excellent point. And it's so important to go do your own personal due diligence, whether you're on the supply chain practitioner side or as consumers. Okay. So, Kim, second story before we welcome in John DeSarbo from ZS. Now, I can't wait to get your take on this topic, Kim. You know, as someone that has moved mountains like you have in retail, supply chain, e-commerce, you name it. So let me unpack this thing a little bit. This comes from our friends at Supply Chain Dive. And as they point out, that last mile squeeze in retail, that battle continues. Mm-hmm. So the article really points to some of the key takeaways from Home Delivery World in Philadelphia a week or two ago, where they were a lot of hubbub around three key ways that retailers were protecting profit in this era of rising logistics costs and, of course, those demanding customer expectations. So those three key ways, kind of general themes: price increases. Yeah, we're just talking about that. Customer experience differentiators. I like that one, especially for those organizations that really are good at communicating well there. And then, of course, tech improvements, going back to Bakil's question, which we're going to touch on later. So retailers have raised the bar also. I am not going to say free shipping, Kim. I refuse to say free shipping. What's that?
Free. It's never free. Don't say it. Yeah.
That's right. But retailers have raised the bar for customers that don't want to pay for shipping, right? So Macy's, you now got to spend $49 versus just $25 if you don't want to pay extra for shipping. Abercrombie and Fitch, you got to spend $99 up from $75. And Neiman Marcus, who never had a minimum spend rule, recently instituted a $50 rule if you don't want to pay extra for shipping. Two other points here. Walmart is going on the tech front, is leveraging AI and predictive technologies to better sort out orders and better understand when shopper surges are going to happen. We've had Jennifer McKeon, senior executive of Walmart, and their supply chain team join us. We'll have to drop that episode here. Good stuff. Well, I am in awe with what Walmart's done over the last 4 or 5 years. Finally, retailers are also leaning on subscriber fees to help protect profit while tweaking that value proposition to make sure customers are willing to pay for it. So, Kim, a mix of economic, supply chain, tech stuff there as the battle rages. I can't wait to hear your thoughts.
Okay, so this is my sweet spot. Inflation, I was like, yeah, but this I know. So the cost of logistics is getting higher. The cost to bring stuff to a customer's door just continues to drive up. So e-commerce companies and retailers are doing lots of things to move inventory closer to the customer. And that's where they're using a lot of AI to get predictive about buying behavior, seasonality, demand based on historic data. S&OP planning, we've been doing it for ages, but we're able to use AI now to try to make it a little bit more accurate. The one thing I hear a lot of people talking about is they're like, customers want the retail store experience, and we're trying to duplicate that in e-commerce. And I think that's a little bit flawed when we think about it, because what customers don't actually want the retail experience. If they wanted the retail experience, they would drive to the store and deal with the retail experience, right? So let's not forget, when we go to the store, do they have it? I got to stand in line. I got to do all the stuff, right? What customers really want is they want it fast. They want it like they just pulled it off the shelf, which is a little bit different than an e-commerce or a retail experience, right? So customers are continuing to demand, I want it fast. I want it yesterday. I don't want to wait for it, but I don't want to pay for it. So we're seeing an increase in subscriptions, Prime-like services out there. Amazon is doing Buy It with Prime now, which is sort of a similar, you get a great experience, but it's their new version of MFN, basically. And so we're seeing more subscription services. We're seeing more minimums for people to make purchases. The other thing that we're starting to see a little bit too is charges for returns. So that used to be table stakes free returns, right? No, we're starting to see $5, $10. Buy return insurance is another thing I'm seeing a lot in the market now. Pay $7.99 and you can return this bag. If not, it's final sale. So we're trying to deal with it, but the cost of it is going to continue to drive the customer experience, and you're going to pay for it one way or the other.
Yes.
But customers are having more confidence. They're buying more high value product with delivery. They're okay with buying the $6,000 Chanel bag and having it delivered to their house. They don't want to hold it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, actually, when you get the $6,000 Chanel bag, you do go to the store and get it
Right.
because there's champagne involved, and you did wait for that bag. So that's not a bad example, but but for high value products, like customers are having more, what's the word I'm looking for? More confidence in the home delivery market.
Yes. Oh man, I think you just gave us a retail and supply chain masterclass. I loved your comments there. There's so much I want to weigh in on. I want to pick one thing out though, because I have a very unpopular position when it comes to returns. And you were mentioning fees. I think personally, one of the ways that we're going to be able to better manage the tidal wave upon tidal wave of returns in 2024 is to charge for them. Right? It's still sad. We've come some way, and of course, our friends at Tony Sciarrotta and the Reverse Logistics Association, we get a lot of great market intel from them, and we've made some progress. But there's still so much stuff that goes straight to the landfills, right?
Yes.
And we've got some great examples of companies diverting it, but we've got a long way to go. And unpopular position or not, I think the consumer should carry a lot more of that burden. Kim, your quick thoughts there.
So I have two minds on this. One, as a consumer, my answer is no. I should be able to return something for free.
Right.
But as somebody who works in this industry and knows the cost associated with returning something, and knowing that people don't understand that, we do have to do something, because the modus now is I'll order the same thing in 4 sizes because I can return them for free.
That's right. We're trained that way.
That way. But on the back end, what happens is that inventory is not, so it's not even just the cost of getting it back, right? It's not in a sellable position while it is in the return path. Yep. It's dark inventory. There's a whole load of like downstream things that happen with overstock now, because we're buying stuff they don't need, because it's like, So returns are a problem, and they have been a problem for a long, long time. And the default answer can't be, we're just going to throw it away. We have to figure out how to recycle it and get it viable again.
Hey, amen. 1,000%. Everything you just shared there, Kim. And I'll tell y'all, I love to see all the real demand for more sustainable practices and outcomes across industry. However, I can't wait to see that demand line up with the returns behavior that we see. And I think I challenge any of y'all out there, if you get an opportunity to tour a returns center, right, a processing center, and to see those trucks as they back up with everything straight from the store, and what those teams have to do to even have a shot of getting, to Kim, to your point, getting things back in a sellable fashion, you might would change. Some of y'all out there might change some of your behaviors.
Change your mind about it. If you saw what it happens to make it happen. It's a process. Yep. And
during the busiest times of year, like peak and right after holidays, we're talking 300 trailer fulls of returns coming to some of those processing centers. At least that was a couple years ago when I toured one.
Yeah, at least. That 300 is a low number on the stuff coming in for these return centers. It's a shocking amount. The one thing I have seen a company do well with the return thing was Nordstrom, where they actually started repairing things, which I thought was really, for high price point products. So like ball gowns and a sequence popped off, right?
Yes.
Never been worn, sequence was gone, but the money they save by that $20 to sew the piece of sequence over, versus losing a $3,000 dress, like repairs are definitely a thing we're going to see more of.
That's right. That re-economy, as you're pointing out, is really growing left and right. And I love seeing that. Okay. We've got a great second half of the show to get to as we welcome in John in just a second. I got a really important thing I want to call out. First off, big thanks to Catherine and Amanda behind the scenes helping to make production happen. Amanda says, by the way, for the record, I 100% disagree with Scott on the returns changes, and she will not change her behaviors. Amanda will have to work on that. Come on now. And kidding aside, on a very serious note, Larry Klein is here from Albany, Georgia. And Larry, I came across your LinkedIn post a couple days ago where you were celebrating that you had finished chemo and got to ring the victory bell at Phoebe Cancer Center down in South Georgia. And I'm telling you, from our whole family to yours, we're so very happy for you, Larry. So we hope you can check back in, give us another update so you can get back out and do big things in global supply chain. So great to have you here, and congrats. Okay. man, we got going on retail. And I got my 18 pages of notes from the cool stuff that Kim was saying. Let's see where we are here. So, all right. So, folks, got a great guest here joining us today. You may have seen I had a YouTube interview where we were both at Gartner Supply Chain Symposium back in May. Good stuff there. So our guest brings more than 25 years of consulting and industry experience to the table, especially at that critical intersection of operations, sales, and marketing strategy. Our guest is a leader in the supply chain and manufacturing practice, ZS Associates, where they help clients create revenue, drive operational improvements, and much, much more. I want to welcome in John DeSarbo, principal with ZS. Hey, John, how you doing?
Hey, Scott. Good to see you again. Hey, Kim.
Hi.
You as well. I tell you what, I can't wait to get you and Kim both weighing in with some of these big, meaty topics we've got here today. So, but before we get there, John, we like starting with a little fun warm-up question here. And so I love, as I was doing my homework, meaning I was lurking around your social footprint, John. And I like that shot of I like that shot of the Washington Monument on your LinkedIn profile. So now y'all know this because we were checking the pre-show, but I bet a lot of folks out there don't. The Washington Monument there in DC was the tallest structure in the world from 1884 to 1889, and it was overtaken by, as John knew, the Eiffel Tower. But here for the fun warm-up question, so y'all might look at the monument a little differently next time you see it because you can't miss it no matter where you are in DC. But the fun warm-up question, John. Me and you and Kim all have spent time in the DC area. That's where you call home now. And we went last year. We took the kids and we checked out, Ben's Chili Bowl. It's been there since 1958. They're spicy chili half smokes. I'm telling you, if I could eat 7 of them, I would have. But that aside, that's my recommendation, folks. I want to ask you, John, and you too, Kim. John, when you bring people in, especially out of town or guests, bring them into DC, what's one place you'd love taking them to?
Awesome. This is a hard one to pick. Ben's is probably on the list, but I joke with my kids when we're retired that I'm going to be driving a tour bus around. So I got a lot of suggestions, but I think probably the one I would say is Arlington National Cemetery, the Arlington House, which is the Lee family house that's on top of the cemetery. I mean, obviously it's a very solemn, important place in our history, but the view there is incredible. I mean, you can see across the whole city, see the monuments. Do that during the day, and then go see the monuments at night when they cool down a little bit.
Lit up. Yeah,
love that, John. And folks, me and Amanda, when we went years ago, we spent several hours at Arlington National Cemetery, and it's just not enough time. You really need to take it and soak in the sacrifice. It is illustrated in a way that's tough to see anywhere else. Kim, all right. So DC, when you've been there, what's one of the places you do not miss?
I love the art museums. The Modern Art Museum is probably my favorite. I can't really compare it to other art museums around the world. People are like, how do you compare it to, MoMA? I like it. It's just one of my favorites in DC.
And the cool thing about some of those places is a lot of the fees are if either free or really low to get into. Mm-hmm. Yep. So I cannot say I've been to that museum you pointed out, Kim. I think Amanda might have.
I think Amanda went. That's okay.
That's okay.
I'm sure
that's right.
You were stuck at the history and the aviation museum. That's where, but yeah, that's a
oh man, Smithsonian. It's just awesome.
Spy Museum. It's another one.
Yes, John.
Oh man. Yeah, that's a really good one. Yep.
You might be driving that tour bus before it's all said and done, John. All right. So Kim and John, we got a lot of stuff to get into here today. I'm really looking forward to really focus in on AI throughout the next 30 minutes or so. And I want to start with this. I think I've got a CNBC article here. So check out this headline and what the article talks about, where it suggests from our friends at CNBC that business leaders may be using Gen AI all wrong. You're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. As reported by CNBC, recent research by Genpact and HFS Research says that only 5% of senior leaders at global companies say they have achieved mature Gen AI initiatives. And 45% are saying they're going to take a wait and see approach, delaying new and additional investment in Gen AI. So, John, I'd love to get your thoughts. Are folks using it wrong?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I live in DC, right? So, the press likes to be a little sensational in their titles. I think this might be the case, but in reality, I think a lot of people are realizing that Gen AI is not a silver bullet. This is harder than it looks. Maybe a few years ago, and the premise behind the article is that people are just focusing too much on how Gen AI can improve efficiency. So it's less that they're making a mistake and more that they're not taking full advantage of the technology. And Scott, this goes back to the conversation we had on Gartner about paving the cow paths, right?
Yep.
I think it's the same idea. I think there's too many companies that are looking at Gen AI as a way to automate or speed up the decision. We're all, the work, right? We're all enamored with its ability to write emails or summarize articles, all the cool tricks that we've learned. But really, that's going to tweak the needle, right? It's going to tweak the performance. Really, the real opportunity here is to rethink processes and not just change how we do work, but what we do, essentially.
Yes. Well, one quick follow-up before I get you to weigh in, Kim. In particular, you're seeing big opportunities, I think, based on our previous conversations with supply chain planning, right? Where folks are doing a little bit with AI in particular, but there's so much more and so many more outcomes to get there, John. Any comments there?
Yeah, I think this is a great example in supply chain. I very much agree with this premise, right? If you think about planning, right, we're all going through, for years, we've done demand and supply planning in the same way, series of meetings, essentially, where we bring people together, we argue about what the number should be. And what I see there is, that people are thinking about Gen AI is speeding up that process, right? Thinking about how do we make those decisions quickly, fewer meetings and so forth, instead of rethinking that business problem that's trying to be solved, which is let's balance supply and demand, right? And I think if you can look at Gen AI less as a way to speed up decisions and more as a way to produce insights, right, that help you make better decisions, not necessarily faster planning decisions, then there's a real opportunity there. And at the Gartner conference, there's a lot of talk about, maybe we need to move on from resilience and think about, taking advantage of uncertainty and move to anti-fragility, if you remember that whole conversation. This is where the real premise is for me. I think the real opportunity is how do you make these decisions faster than your competitors and better than your competitors and gain competitive advantage?
Yes. So Bakil says, nailed it. That's a lot of what you're just sharing there, John. And I tend to agree with you. Kim, weigh in. Are we using it wrong in supply chain?
I wouldn't say we're using it wrong. I agree with everything that John said. It is not the end all be all, but we go through this with technology all the time. We come up with new tech and everybody's like, this is going to be the thing that solves, all of our problems. But to John's point, it's an education tool. It's a different point of view. It's possibly an unbiased point of view to bring to the table. It's education and it's data. It is not the end all be all. AI is not mature enough to take over S&OP planning altogether. I heard someone give an example probably about 6 or 7 months ago. They're like, would AI have predicted the pandemic? No, because it had never happened before. So, so when we look at what is AI actually capable of, I think it's a great tool for education. I think it's a great tool to have insights, to look at things. But to John's point, it's not going to take away those decisions. We still need humans.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent comments there, Kim and John. And by the way, folks, if you want to check out my chat with John at Gartner Supply Chain Symposium, we've dropped that link right there in the comments. And one of my favorite parts of that conversation, John, was you mentioned the word, the phrase, don't fall for the AI hoopla. Because there's a lot of that out there, right?
Yeah,
there's a lot of that out there. So check that out.
Yeah.
Good stuff, Kim and John. We got a lot more to get into here today. Let's see here. The next article we're going to share, talk about, hate to call things clickbait, but this article and the headline is close.
Yeah.
So let's broaden our focus out a bit more. So this great, interesting read in the Wall Street Journal prompted quite a few conversations in the last week or two. The AI train, it says, is losing steam already. Costs too much. The pace of innovation has started to hit the brakes and more. John, your thoughts?
Yeah, this one really got people fired up, I think, for a couple of reasons. I think one, the author, Christopher Mims from the Wall Street Journal, is really well regarded and is kind of a straight shooter. So people were a little surprised that he put this point of view out there, as well as it followed NVIDIA earnings announcement, which,
Right.
Again, I think if I could turn back time, right, I would have invested in NVIDIA. But I think their market cap is like over $3 trillion now or something like that. But the key points in the article are, look, there's a lot of promise with this technology, but innovation is slowing for a few reasons. One, it's kind of interesting, but the point he made is we're running out of data to train the large language models, right? That, essentially we're running these models we're developing against the whole internet. We don't have like 10 more internets, right? So there's a lot of work to produce synthetic data to train these models. And there's an argument that maybe that's less valuable. GenAI is super expensive, right? And I think a lot of companies are figuring that out. And in light of that, a lot of companies aren't seeing the ROI yet. They're getting stuck with this, running a pilot or building a proof of concept, but not necessarily seeing it scale. And when they do, it's expensive to do so. And the last thing I think people are realizing, there's so many companies that are out there that are offering GenAI tools, applications, solutions. It's really confusing. I think companies that I've talked to are really trying to sort the wheat from the chaff and really understand, what's out there that they should be using. So I think the article's premise is that, all these factors are going to come together and it's going to commoditize the AI. There was even a point that I guess Salesforce had done a study where they looked at 75% or 3 out of 4 workers are using GenAI today, but only 20% of companies are actually paying for it. So the idea was, maybe we're just playing around with this new technology. So the point was, in the Wall Street Journal, as an investor, the bust is coming, right? Right. So I don't know. I'm not a stock picker, as I mentioned. That's why I'm still working. That's why I don't run NVIDIA. But I think Microsoft, Google, these companies are really still innovating. So I don't buy that idea so much. But there's some truths in it, right? I think it is expensive, and it is confusing for buyers to really figure out what's useful. So I think the implications are really, you got to pick the right use cases. Going back to the CNBC article, what's your business strategy? What are you trying to achieve? Focus your investment there, and then be careful who you work with, because there probably will be a shakeout, right? Just like we've seen in other areas.
Excellent take there, Kim. John, Kim, before I bring you in, I think one of the dangers related to AI is very common to just about any other technology that's ever been introduced, and that is the change management. We see so many organizations and leaders really botching the introduction and the lack of focus as it relates to AI, and that can burn out your workforce because they're trying to get the job done every day, right? And trying to do a good job. And I think that's where leadership, out of many other observations, I think that's where leadership can do better in general. Kim, weigh in. The AI revolution is already losing steam.
I would not say it's losing steam. I think we're having a reality check on what AI actually is and who actually has AI. We've been using the words AI for like 10 years, right? It used to be machine learning. And so the concept has been around a long time, and a lot of companies just adopted that we have AI technology. And as my good friend Charles says, it may be artificial, but that doesn't mean it's intelligent. So you have to be careful with who you partner with, to John's point. Like, is it actually AI? I talked to a company not long ago who was doing broker AI. Kim, we got to tell you about this great new thing. We're doing broker AI. It's really just a bunch of brokers that they source out to, which is cool. But is it AI? And so be careful with your partners. And technology always goes back to 2 things: data and process. You can have the most beautiful technology in the world, but if you don't have good data and you don't have good processes to do something with whatever that technology tells you, it doesn't really matter. So AI is great. I think it's a little bit of extra great ingredients into an already good process, but it is not going to fix a problem.
Got to watch out for the hoopla. Kim,
AI washing, a lot of confusion as to what type of AI you're talking about, and I think that we're all going through an educational process. And to your point, Scott, I think a lot of times it's the people issues. It's the people, not the technology. It's the hardest part.
Yeah.
Excellent point. And Kim, I think every entrepreneur, every marketing mind out there is seeing the AI is selling. AI is moving stuff.
We got
So
AI.
we're gonna
We got AI. We got AI.
we're gonna put it on every package. So that's a great point, though.
Yep.
You gotta know who you're working with and really do your homework there. Because I tell you, partnering with the wrong organization is a lot more costlier than returns, right? And return fees we were talking in the first half of the show.
Yeah, you get S&OP wrong. Like if you really relied on a good A&I engine, or you were not a good if you really relied on an AI engine to do your S&OP, it could cost you millions of dollars in bad decisions.
That's right.
And so this isn't something to be taken lightly. So any company who's out there who's like, we're just using all AI to make our decisions, it's going to cost them some money.
Yeah, excellent point. All right, so we got one more article to go, and then we're going to make sure folks know how to connect with John and the ZS team on the move. This is Larry Klein. Larry Klein says, hey, nothing better than good old human intuition. I got a big value for that for sure. T Squared brings up Rudy. Now, Rudy is not a new acronym, as T Squared has pointed out. It is the Jetsons housekeeper. Right? That's the Rudy.
Yes.
So T Squared says Rudy and the people need to talk and get to know the ins and outs of each other. That's right. We got to bridge the relationship gap between technology, technology continues to get smarter and smarter every day for the most part, with the human factor.
Absolutely.
And then
there's a phrase nowadays that everybody's talking about, Scott, is human in the middle, right?
Yes.
Then human centered. And it's not about replacing people. It's about empowering them to make decisions. And I think, I know listening to the buzz previously, this has come up. I think that the sort of paranoia, the nervousness, anxiety of AI taking our jobs, I think that's less likely to occur. And really, this is more positive than it is negative.
Excellent point, John. And I'll tell you, if AI looks like this is kind of a scary image. It's captivating on the front end of the Wall Street Journal. Because if this is the kind of bot that's coming to my front door delivering pizza, I'll be very fearful of automation, AI, the whole game. Let's see here. This is Thomas, I think. I'm just going to read it. It's a big comment here. Thomas says AI already exists in Microsoft Office and other productivity tools in an effort to improve users' ability to leverage AI. That's right. It's no longer the little animated paper clip. Remember 20 or 30 years ago, right? Clippy or whatever that was called.
I miss Clippy.
Yep.
So Thomas continues, you can use Google Gemini to ask questions and improve the effectiveness of searches. But in the main right now, I think kind of in general right now, much more AI is available to help you do your job better versus a new way to do your job or replace you. John, kind of going to your point there. Good stuff there, Thomas. Let's see here. All right, so let's keep driving here. We got this third article. And this will be interesting here. All right, so let me tee this up, and I'll get John and Kim to weigh in here. So this is an interesting view from MIT professor Darren Acemoglu via our friends at Insight. Now the professor says AI may not exactly be leading the next great industrial revolution, at least on the scale that many have spoken about. Specifically, organizations like Goldman Sachs have predicted a 7% increase in global GDP over the next decade, powered mainly by AI. But Dr. Acemoglu's data shows it may be more like 1%, which I think is in the middle of the range that he's pointing out. So, John, and I love this. Looks like AI over here kicking back, waiting on lunch or something.
Just relaxing.
John, your thoughts?
Bring him something. He's just like, where's my coffee?
Yeah. So we're starting to see a little bit of dueling economists here, like a bit of a debate in the academic community. I like to think when I read this article, it's almost like he's calling out his peers, right? Let's meet behind the schoolyard and duke it out over whether we're going to have an impact or not. But it's an interesting article. I think what's made it so, I guess, controversial, whatever, is that it refutes some of what some recent studies that show a much bigger impact. Goldman Sachs had talked about, essentially in 10 years, we're going to see 7% impact in productivity and close to that on the GDP. One of my former professors, who's now at Stanford, Eric Brynjolfsson, had a pretty famous study looking at, the impact of GenAI and call centers and so forth, and then really showed much bigger impact. So what this professor Darren did is he's a economist, right? So he applied this idea of taking microeconomic analysis, so what's happening within a business, and then based on that analysis, applying it to estimate the macroeconomic impact or the impact on our economy. And basic idea, again, I'm not an economist either, so I think he essentially looked at how are we using GenAI today for different tasks, and then how many of those tasks are there in the economy, and what's the average cost impact per task. Essentially, if you count up all the tasks, it'll tell you what's the benefit to in terms of productivity or cost reduction in the economy. He did all that analysis, and to your point, I think he came up with less than 1% impact on the GDP in 10 years, which is it's a big nothing burger, right? Although when you're talking about GDP, 1% to me seems pretty important.
That's right.
His points were, we're using this for simple tasks today, right? And when we start to apply this to more complicated tasks, so instead of writing emails, making decisions, prediction, that there's much less of an impact that'll occur and it'll take longer. He also looked at, the downside is it's going to impact some of us more than others. So it starts to drive inequity in the economy. And so that kind of counters what you see as benefits. So look, I don't know. I mean, different economists predicting the future. I think from my perspective, we've kind of seen this movie before. I think to Kim's point, we've gone through different technology waves, video conferencing, for example.
Oh, right. Yep.
Video conferencing, the first video conferencing tool was in 1964. And I can remember in the 90s using PictureTel and different, I think it was
WebEx.
Yeah. I mean, well, so that there has been around since, for 25 plus years.
Yeah.
Other technologies, the CRM, customer relationship management. Salesforce just celebrated their 25th anniversary.
Wow.
In our space in supply chain, I think Connexus Rapid Response was launched in 95. So, it takes time, right? I think it's 20 to 30 year impact before you really see impact. I think a lot of us were so excited about GenAI because we were all adopting it so quickly, but there's a difference between kind of experimentation and adoption and impact. And I think that's the story that's playing out right now is they're the people that are figuring out how to use this to really drive their individual and company performance, and those that are still learning. And it's going to take time for it all to play out.
Yeah, good stuff there, John. Kim, your thoughts?
Again, I agree with John, and I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier is that there's data and there's processes. And AI is great, but until you kind of get these two things figured out, it's just technology. And we've already talked about it's got to learn. We got to teach it. We're running out of material to teach it. So there's nothing magic. I feel like a lot of people have gotten excited about it because they can type something in or they can circle something on a screen and they get an answer and they're like, this is great. But behind the scenes, kind of what we've been talking about, it all depends on how you built it, what platform it's built on, how much information, how accurate it is. And these are the things we're going to continue to figure out. Like, I don't think we're going to have AI doing heart surgery anytime soon. These more complex tasks are always going to be a little bit elusive.
Yeah. And to the point, it's here. I mean, I think one of the person who came in on the chat, this is built into Copilot. It's built into the Google suite and so forth. So we're using it. I mean, it's here. It's not a question of, the robots are coming or what have you. This is part of our toolkit. And I think it's reality, but it's not going to create this dramatic transformational change unless we really figure out how to use it in the right way. So for supply chain professionals out there, it goes back to the basics, right? What's your strategy? What are you trying to achieve as a business? How does the supply chain enable that, right? And then what are the key decisions really that need to be made? How can you use these tools, not to replace you, but to support you in making those decisions, right? And that's what it's all about.
Good stuff, John and Kim. Well said. Okay, I've gotten this wrong again. On a lighter note, Rosie as T
I
Squared
was going to
points out.
say,
Rosie was the housekeeper.
Right? It had the skirt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rudy was at George's job. So Rudy was that T Squared. That's why you keep using Rudy. That was the technology at his job.
And there was the dog too, right? The robot dog.
Robot dog. Yep.
Well, I bet T Squared knows the name of that dog. I can't remember right off, but regardless, John and Kim, a lot of good stuff. And one of the common threads throughout our conversation today was kind of what's old is new again, getting back to the leadership basics, and of course, being really particular and doing your homework on who you partner with, because as Kim pointed out, you take the wrong approach with some, not just AI, but really a lot of things in supply chain. You can lose millions and millions of dollars and burn your team out. Quick. And that latter is just as important as the dollars for sure. So John, let's make sure folks know what you and the ZS team do in a nutshell. How are you helping organizations out there?
What do you do? I think this is, my family members would ask me this all the time, but, short story is, ZS has been around for 40 years, helping companies with challenges like this, right? I think we're all about accelerating profitable growth by applying technology and analytics to tackle really complicated business problems and improve customer experience. So it's figuring out what's the next wave of technology and then how do you apply it to your business. So that's what we do. And there's lots of ways we do that. I think help people with different projects, implement these technologies, to find their strategy, choose the right players to work with. We have some of our own tools that we're applying and bringing to our clients to accelerate their adoption. So, but it's all about, what's the latest and greatest? How do I apply it to my business? That's what we're all about.
Well, John, I'll tell you what, if I were to share your answer with my family, they'd get it. So I bet your family, now that you've got that nailed down, I bet they know exactly what you do out there, John.
You'd be surprised at the dinner table conversations in the DeSarbo house.
Well, folks, let's make it even easier. Let's see here. We are dropping information about ZS out in the comments. You can learn more about ZS scaling generative AI for value by building chains of interconnected use cases. So check that out. And we got some other links there. You can connect with both John and ZS. And John, how can folks, before I get Kim Reuter's patented key takeaway, make sure folks want to connect with Kim. John, how can folks connect with you? What's the easiest way to find you?
I'm a big LinkedIn user. I kind of I got off the train at that point in the social media spectrum, not Instagram yet. But just hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to start conversing with people on these issues. You can actually hit our website as well, and you'll see a little bit more about me. But I'll link back to LinkedIn.
That'd be good. And your blog articles, folks, you got to connect with John. So you can check out the LinkedIn articles and, of course, the ZS blog as well. So John DeSarbo, principal with ZS. Great to have you here today. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Kim. Good to see you both.
And we'll see you soon. Thanks, John.
Take care. Bye.
All right, Kim. Well, man, a lot of good stuff there. I wish we had a couple more hours with you and John.
Yes.
Just the AI topic alone, like you said on the front end, there's just so much to it. But all that aside, so Kim, we covered a lot of ground. We've established that you, nor I, nor John are economists. That's important. I don't even pretend to be one, but we're from the economy and the inflation to the final mile, which that battle keeps on rolling, to a lot of stuff about AI and a lot of different opinions out in industry right now. What was one of your favorite things that folks got to take away from our conversation here?
I'm going to step away from AI because it's such a big topic and everybody's talking about it, and focus on the last mile. We're going to continue to see cost increases in last mile. And I think consumers have got to brace themselves for footing a little bit of that bill, even if it's a couple dollars for returns here or there, or paying a subscription fee for free services or free shipping services. We are going to continue to see, consumers are not going to stop wanting to have stuff delivered to their house as soon as possible, but we are going to have to start paying for it. I don't think there's any other way around it. Consumers are going to have to level set their expectations.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And it's beyond time for that to happen, Kim. So love that. Look forward to our future conversations. Folks, Kim, beyond the great work you do, you're also keynoting out there at a variety of events. Where can folks find you this fall, I want to say you've got a big
We
overseas.
have a big event coming up. So my next big event for e-commerce is going to be in Bangkok. I'll be speaking at the WCA e-commerce conference, and we are going to be talking about how freight forwarders, kind of focused on small, medium freight forwarders, can add value and participate in the e-commerce supply chain. Because there's a lot of companies out there who want to get into this. So how can you do that, make some money, and be relevant to e-commerce sellers and vendors?
Love it. Love it. And folks can connect with you on LinkedIn as well, right?
Yep. Yes.
It's just that easy. So folks, hey, don't take my word for it. Connect with Kim, connect with John. These are folks that you want to add to your network so you can really, as Jake Barr likes to say, keep it real. So you can separate the hoopla, one of John's terms I love coming back to, because there's so much fluff out there. There's way so much. You want to connect with folks that can give it to you straight and what you need to know about, whether it's technology or supply chain or retail e-commerce, you name it. We also dropped other resources out there. You can check that out if you're particularly interested in the GenAI aspects of our conversations here today. We've got the ZS Generative AI Insights resource. You check that out and let us know what you think. Okay, so we have a big week of programming. Kim, really enjoyed knocking out these conversations with you. I loved your perspective here today. I look forward to hearing your takeaways from going to visiting Bangkok in a few months. I bet that is awesome. But I look forward to our next show together.
Yep.
And to all of y'all out there, right? Be sure to connect with John, connect with Kim. Let us know what you think, throughout this conversation today. If you're listening to the replay, drop a comment. Right? Check out the resources we dropped, including With That Said, which we covered on the front end. But here is the biggest challenge of the day, right? Take one thing that Kim or John dropped here on our show today on The Buzz and put it into action. Your team is ready to do things better, smarter, more successful. They're ready to change the business, but the onus is on you, leadership, right? To take that action. Deeds, not words. And with all of that said, on behalf of our entire team here at Supply Chain Now, Scott Luton challenging you, do good, give forward, be the change. We'll see you next time, right back here. Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.